The title of our conference is Mission Possible, the 4 Ways to Build Power. I've been teaching on this for almost 3 decades now. This is really what we see as a balanced approach to unionism that gives us the most power out in the work sites and to get good contracts. It starts with organizing, whether it's internal organizing or external. External is growing our membership, adding numbers to the membership, and internal would be getting more worksite leaders trained out in the work sites. From there, we move on to collective bargaining. It's not enough to organize, we have to also get good contracts, and then we have to enforce those contracts as well. From there, we go into political and community work, because you don't just work in a store, you're part of a community, you have politicians that you elect into office, you have a voice in that as well. What I want to point out about this is that if you look at this as a tire with air in it, it's important to have balance in your tires. If you look at the left of this diagram, you see organizing in political community. If a local only focuses on those 2 areas, then you have a lot of imbalance. You're going to have a flat tire and not be able to get where you're going. This would be an extreme version of the organizing model, which I've talked about in the past, and which Joe Earleywine will be talking about this morning. It's good to do those things, but you also have to look at the other side, where you have collective bargaining and contract enforcement. On the right side, if that's all you focus on is the union, collective bargaining, and making sure that the contract's being enforced, then you have the extreme version of a servicing model, and you don't really want that either. And unions did that throughout the 70s, where that's all they focused on. They just became a service local, and then they weren't organizing, growing, and building real power. So that's what today's going to be all about. All of the speakers today are going to be focused on these 4 areas. I'll start by reading the mission statement. We are a diverse, member-driven union fighting for economic and social justice. We empower through respect, integrity, and dignity. Our strength comes from standing in solidarity with our communities to build the better. So now I'd like to introduce our first trainer, Joe Earleywine, in his workshop, Building and Organizing Culture. I've had the honor of working with Joe off and on for almost 3 decades. Where I've worked in various roles during my career, Joe has honed his skills with a singular purpose in mind: organizing the unorganized and building real power for the working class. I've often thought of him as a lunch pail organizer, someone who's willing to roll up his sleeves and do the hard work that's needed to raise the standards for the working class. He's kind of old school, like a grizzled boxer, although he cleaned up his act this morning. And after retiring a couple years ago from our international union, he now does training and consulting work. He's been helping our local in establishing an organizing department and training a young core of tomorrow's leaders. Joe is the best I've worked with in the business, and he knows his craft. I'm also proud to call him my friend for, again, almost 3 decades. Let's give him a warm virtual welcome.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for that fabulous introduction, Mike. It's been a real honor to work with you over the last 30 years, and I've been very honored since I retired a few years ago to help kind of change the culture here at Local 367. I was involved last year in the organizing of the Fred Meyer and Tumwater, and I'm currently working with a few of the organizers on a couple of other projects, many of which we will be seeing results soon. So I'd like to take a minute to just discuss, some of the things that we're doing here as we move from, a service model union to a more organizing model union. And, one of the things that's really important is that we all understand how we're moving things forward. So, there's a few PowerPoints that I'd like to get into, but before we get into that, I think the most important thing that I can talk about here is, in order to change from, a service model union to an organizing model union, it's not a way that we can just flip a switch. This has to be an evolutionary approach, and it's going to take some time, and it's going to take commitment, not only from leadership of the union, but also from every single member understanding that there's a difference. You know, for many years here, the local has been a service model local. It's been very reactive. The members call, we go, we help, right? We're trying to change that in a slow but steady trajectory toward a more service model or toward a more organizing model approach, where the members themselves are taking ownership of the union. So one might ask, how do we do that? Well, you have to start out with baby steps. Just like anything, you can't go from 0 to 60. So we start with making sure that people are active, that people are informed, that people understand their contracts. We make sure that the reps are not the lone rangers in the store, right? The reps have to work hand in hand, in tandem with the members to solve problems as they arise. I'm really honored to be on this panel with great people like McAlevey, Kim Cordova, April Sims, Mia, and Jim. I've known many of these people for years, and I've known of many of these people for years. I once went to a conference years ago with the talented and bright, very fabulous April Sims, and she told a story about being a union rep. I believe it might have been at AFSCME or the teachers union. Here's the thing, you guys, if I'm the union rep and you're the member and you're having a problem, say, with your vacation. So your vacation has been scheduled out of seniority, or your vacation request has been denied and it's been given to someone else, and the contract clearly states that the vacation should have been sent to you. What do we do? Well, what happens is people call their union rep, and I'm young Joe Earleywine, the new union rep, and I'm excited about all the things that I know, and I come into the store and I have the contract in my back pocket. So I come in, I've got the contract in my back pocket, and you tell me all of the issues that are going on and how you've got your vacation denied and they gave it to someone with less seniority, or whatever the issue is. And tears in your eyes, you really want to get this sorted out, and I say, oh, I'm going to fix it. And I've got the contract in my back pocket, and I go into HR's office and I call the store director, and we sit down and I pull out the contract and I say, here it is, black and white in Article 8.4, that the member here should have gotten their vacation and somehow it wasn't, and they gave it to somebody else instead. And the manager agrees, and we go through it, and there's a little back and forth, and I fix the problem and I put the contract back in my back pocket. And then I tell you that the problem has been solved, and I walked out. Well, who does the power go with at that time? Who does the power go with? Well, the power goes with me. Now, the problem with that approach is, what happens next time? Next time there's a problem, who do you call? Well, you call me. And the problem with that is then I've really fallen into this service model trap, where every time there's a problem with the schedule, every time there's a problem with vacation, every time there's an issue with people being late, every time there's an attendance problem, people call me. And if they call me, then I have the power, and I'm solving the problems with management, and the members are not involved. What ends up happening there is it's an enabling weakness of the union, because all the power goes with the rep and all the power goes with the union office, and the members themselves are not taking ownership in solving the problems. Do you think that management is really going to listen to a handful of union reps, or do you think that they'll listen more when there's 100 workers in the store who are all making demands? So this is the kind of approach that we're trying to move to. Now, if we move to that all at once, we're going to have some real problems, right? Members are used to doing things a certain way. We're used to doing things a certain way. So what we're looking for here is an evolutionary process. We're going to move this stuff a little bit at a time. And so part of why we're trying to do this is We have to take it where the members themselves are taking ownership of the union, and the members themselves are moving this union forward, and management sees that the members are the face of the union. I'm not sure that that's happening now, but that is one of our goals and what we're striving for. And I really want to applaud the leadership at this union, Mike Hines, Solberg, Mia. Like, you guys are doing a great job of having a long-term vision for changing the culture. Changing that culture is not easy. It takes time. I've been involved in this before at other locals, and it's not something that you can do overnight. So how do we start? Well, we start with things like these leadership conferences, right? We start with things like recruiting stewards on the shop floor. We start with, when you guys were in your bargain last time and we were filling out the strike pledge cards, members getting other members to fill out those cards. We've recently reached a majority in the non-food department at the Sumner Fred Meyer. That department has been non-union for about 20 years, maybe 25 years. And don't get me wrong, we've had some talented organizers working on this. But what got us over the top was members talking to members. Because ultimately, organizing is about relationships. And it's about relationships not only with the rep and the members, while that's important, the most important relationship is the members' relationship with the other members. So the members with the other members are able to convince people to overcome fear, do something complicated, right, and stand up to their boss and demand more. So on your screen here, I'm pretty sure y'all can see there's a slide about the service model versus the organizing model. And my eyes aren't great, but so, in the service model, union leadership solves problems for the members on the basis of complaints or requests. So we all know what that looks like, right? The member calls, they say, I didn't get my vacation. I just made the whole description of how that looks. So the member calls and we react. In the organizing model, we stimulate and involve members in problem solving by group process or collective action. So let's think of some times we've done that. The strike pledge cards were one way that we did that, right? I think we had a big fight over safety, right? We started leafleting in front of the stores. As soon as that happened, within a few days, Allied employers were calling us saying, let's talk, right? Allied is the representative of all of the different grocery stores that we represent. So what we've learned, and we're not the only local doing this, and you guys know I do this all over the country, what we've learned is that direct action gets results. Direct action gets results. Later you guys are going to hear from Mia and Jim McGinnis, who they deal a lot with the employer directly, and they take care of things, incredibly bureaucratic and complicated things. And they do all of these things on behalf of the members. And don't get me wrong, they get lots of results. But in order for us to really support the work that they do, we need to have members involved and active, right? We need an informed and active membership who are pushing for the needs of the members, because no one is a better spokesperson than the members themselves. So in a service model, we have a total reliance on grievance and negotiation process. Don't get me wrong, you guys, those are very important things, right? Coal miners fought and died to give us the right to bargain. People 100 years ago really made huge sacrifices, many of which we can't even fathom, to give us the right to bargain, to file grievances. But all of those things only work when we are backed up by the members and we're backed up by direct action. So in the organizing model, we're not limited to grievance and negotiation process. We can do things like a no confidence petition, right? We can do things like leafleting customers. We can run consumer education campaigns that really put pressure on the employer and let them know what they're doing and how they're treating workers. In the servicing model, there's a passive membership or limited leadership request for cooperation. So a passive membership is a membership that's pretty asleep, and we're, as union reps, trying to wake them up to get them to do certain tasks. In the organizing model, we have a commitment to education and communication from and participation in the union. So that's exactly what we're attempting to do here, right? We need to really focus, and I believe that the leadership at this local has, like, to do that Jane McAlevey training, the organizing for power, and have the participation from the members. I'm very, very hopeful that we've all been learning from these. And what we're learning is direct action works, and that management gets much more intimidated when they see the members rising up and taking power of their own union than us rattling the saber in the union office. So we need a reliance on the other thing about the service model is there's a reliance on specialists, experts, and union staff. I never like to call myself an expert, but I have been an organizer for 25 years, maybe a little more. And my job now is to work myself out of a job. My job is to train organizers and to train members so that they can stand up, overcome fear, and make demands of management themselves. In the organizing model, it's the development and dependence on members, on their skills and abilities. Now, these are the things that we're training people to do now. These are the things that you guys have been learning in the Jane McAlevey training. These are the things that we're going to continue to learn at the conference today and moving on into the future. In the service model, it's secretive, closed door and close-knit communication, lack of transparency. I think that, one of the things that the leadership at this local has done, and believe me, you guys, I've been around here for quite some time. Many of you know I just live down the street. We're about information sharing and open communication channels. We want to make sure that the members are involved in the heavy decision making, right? This is a democratic, member-driven union, and we are moving more and more toward that through this evolutionary process. In the service model, there's a top-down structure, right? The president of the local says something, and that's what goes. In the organizing model, it's bottom-up. There's grassroots structure. The workers themselves come up with ideas, and they help to make those ideas a reality. And part of our job as union staff is not to be in the front leading. Our job is to be behind pushing. I think this is really, really important. Like, you guys know I've been involved in many, many actions in healthcare and retail over the years. I'm never on the news. If you Google me, I'm hard to find. That is by design. That is because my job is to be in the back pushing, and the members are always the face of the union. In the service model, we're reactive. The member calls, I ride in on my white horse with my saber, and I go sort it out. In the organizing model, we are proactive. Before problems start, we have a militant group of members who are willing to push management to do what's right. In the service model, we're dependent on management-friendly relations and backroom deals. Just trying to work out a deal with that store director to make sure that Mary gets her unemployment, right? Look, that works to a certain degree, but it can become too chummy. It becomes too friendly. It becomes too relational. We want to make sure, and don't get me wrong, organizing is about relationships, but it's not about the relationship between the union rep and the boss. The relationship is from member to member, members supporting other members, solidarity across departments, solidarity across unions, solidarity across all of the demographics, making sure that, as the longshoremen say, an injury to one is an injury to all, and we are willing to stand up and fight together. So we want to be proactive. We don't want to be reactive. So in the organizing model, it's independent of management. It's member-driven. So the members are really taking control. In the service model, it really makes distinctions between internal and external organizing activities. In the organizing model, it makes no distinction between internal and external organizing activities. I could talk to you guys for an hour about this, but I'll spare you. What this means is an external organizing drive is when, it's what I've spent my whole career doing, it's when you're not looking for somebody who is like a ball hog. You're looking for somebody who can share the success with the rest of their coworkers, prop people up, stay positive, overcome fear, and push the boss. The way that people overcome fear is twofold. They see others overcoming fear, and they get just angry enough to where they don't care what happens. They're gonna take action. So these are the things that we're looking to do. So I'm going to break from this and go into how do we do these things. And look, many of you have worked with your coworkers for decades. You have solid relationships. Organizing is about relationships. It's about your relationship with the worker. It's about your relationship with your coworkers. And it's about standing up and taking some of the power back. So the way that we do this is we have to make sure that people feel heard and that people feel supported. There's a standard that, and some people will call it a 6-point wrap, some call it a 5-point wrap, some call it a 7-point wrap, but there are these things that we do in all of these conversations. I want you guys to understand the conversation is designed so that people feel heard, they feel supported, and they are moved at the end to take action. So every interaction that you guys, most of you are stewards, right? Or activists in your stores. When you're walking away from your coworker after a conversation, we want your coworker to feel powerful, like there's a plan to win, and a little bit angry, and that anger is focused on the boss. So how do we do this? What is the best way? Well, talking one-on-one is really important. And usually I would be in a room full of people and I would say, why? Why is talking one-on-one important? But I think you guys all know. It's much easier and much more motivating to have a one-on-one conversation with someone than it is in a group, or than it is in a text, or than it is in an email. So if at all possible, you have a one-on-one conversation with your coworkers where you explain to them what's going on, but more than an explanation, you ask them questions and you hear. You really listen to what's going on with them. So here are the steps of an organizing conversation. 1, you introduce yourself and you build rapport. Many of you are already doing this as, as stewards and just in your day-to-day when there's a new hire, I'm sitting here looking at Julie Richards, who I've known for years, right? I'm sure when a new person came to your store, right, you introduced yourself. And then you ask some questions to build rapport. How long have you been here? What did you do before this? Tell me about your family. You guys, every interaction that we have with your coworkers and with members has to have a balance of relational and transactional. The relational is, tell me about your family. The transactional is, will you sign my pledge card? The relational is, how long have you worked here? The transactional is, will you come to the meeting on Thursday? So then number 2, you want to ID issues. You want to find out, where is the worker's sore tooth? And then you want to agitate around those issues. So ID issues and agitate. You ask pointed but open-ended questions. Then it's how organizing works and the union difference. Imagine a better job. Imagine a job that's better. Then you inoculate. It's always good to let people know what they're getting into, right? And it's always good for people to know, what is the employer going to do? How are they going to react? And then number 5 is call the question. You ask for a commitment and you follow up. Can you sign the pledge card? I'm going to check in on you next Wednesday and make sure that you did. So, introduce yourself and build rapport. Now, I'm a little curious if the folks upstairs can hear me and answer, but I was talking with my my acquaintance and becoming friend, Cam, the other day, about what do you say to introduce yourself and what questions build rapport? Cam, can you answer?
Yeah, hi Joe.
Great.
Hope you guys can hear us good. I would just start by introducing myself. Say, hi, I'm Cam. I'm a spur with Local 367, and I'm also a member. I work in the fire store too. So, I want them to know that I can relate to them. Then I like to use a lot of humor with my coworkers when I'm in my own shop working. So I might just make some type of joke with them or something, just make them comfortable enough to bring issues to them.
That's great, Cam. One of the things that we like to do is introduce ourselves and then ask questions that build rapport. And the reason that you do this is that's all about that balance of relational and transactional. I want to make sure that I'm not going too fast or too slow, so you guys just, let me know. So you want to introduce yourself and build rapport, and here's a couple of examples. Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm a steward with the union. When did you start working here? Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm a steward with the union. What did you do before you started here? Now, one of the tricks to asking these questions, you guys, is they are open-ended questions, and I'm sure that you probably talked about this in the Organizing for Power training. But the difference between an open-ended question and a closed question is an open-ended question cannot be answered with yes or no, right? So you want to make sure that you're drawing people out and that people are talking to you. So, instead of saying, do you like the attendance policy? It's much more effective if you say, how do you feel about the attendance policy, right? Instead of saying, any of these sort of yes or no questions, right? How long have you worked here? Somebody is a good one, right? Now people might say, I've been here 7 years. Okay, great. So that's a little quick. So then you say, well, in that time, have things gotten better or gotten worse? Very open-ended. That's what we're striving for in these building rapport questions. So next you have number 2, where you ID issues and you agitate around what these issues could be. So when you're looking for issues, what are some of the questions that you can ask? One of the things that happens is, we all understand that there's apathy in the work site, but if you really start drilling down with people and asking, there's always something that sticks in their craw. So I like to ask pointed but open-ended questions like, here are some issue questions. Tell me what you like about your job. The first time I ever heard an organizer say that, I was kind of taken aback. It's like, why would we ask what they like about their job? Our job is to get them to organize the union. We want to find out what they don't like. So what you're doing is you want to get them talking. It's much easier to talk about the positive than the negative, and especially in the beginning. So tell me what you like about your job. And they tell you, and you let them go on for a few sentences, and you understand, and you're nodding, and you're listening, and you have to be authentic. You have to really be listening. This is one of the biggest problems, is that people need to feel heard at work. And then it's, what would you like to change? Now we're getting more into the agitational questions. And then, how do you get problems resolved? Well, in a non-union workplace, they don't. In a union workplace, we have more power, right? We're able to get more problems resolved, but in this service model, we're doing it in a way that we're trying to evolve to where the members are taking more ownership in the solutions. So, who decides now? Who decides now is one of my favorite agitational questions, because if we're honest with ourselves, who's making the decisions in these stores most of the time? Who's making the decisions especially in an external organizing drive, right? The boss is making all the decisions. In an internal organizing drive, our job is to be pulling the power away from management and back into the hands of the workers. So if you could change one thing about your job, what would it be? Every time I ask this question, I get a whole lot more than one thing. Most people have a variety of things that they would like to change, and it starts with pay. But that's not always the number one, right? I mean, it might be that's the first thing that they say, but what really sticks in their craw is oftentimes a question of respect, a question of being heard, a question of being valued, right? A question of how they're treated on the day-to-day. And then, what would you like to work on together? And this is a question that builds solidarity, right? And lets the person know you're not going to be handling this alone. So our issues have to be wide, felt by many, many people, and deep, felt strongly by many, many people. So now we go to the third step in this organizing conversation. What do you say the union difference is? And then you explain a little bit about the process. Now, there are some slight variations here between internal organizing and external organizing, and I want to make sure everybody knows what that is. Internal organizing is what we're doing in the stores right now, right? We're organizing around a specific issue like safety, right? Like staffing, like, a contract that we're trying to move the employer to put more, money and provisions in. That's the internal organizing. External organizing is the stuff that I've done a lot more of, and that is when people don't have a union and they want one, and we're going to facilitate recognition through a National Labor Relations Board election or some other alternative process. So how organizing works and the union difference is very, very important, because our job is to lay out a plan that the union is the solution and that people can win. So, how do we explain the union difference? Now, you guys are going to laugh about this because I talk about explain, but then all I do is ask questions. Now, part of why I ask those questions is it's always more advantageous to us if the member is coming up with the answers themselves. Nobody wants to endure a lecture, and especially from me. So, have you ever felt a lack of power at work? I have a feeling if you ask that, you're going to be there a while. Have you gone to management alone with a concern? This is what I call the setup, right? This is a setup question for talking about solidarity, power in numbers, and why the union is important. What happened when you did? Many of us have had that experience, right? Go by yourself to the boss and talk about, this thing in the back room that isn't set up right, and we really need the sink over here because it just doesn't make sense. And they give you a lot of I'll look into that and get back to you later. And a month goes by and you go talk to them again. Hey, this sink is really in the wrong spot and would be a lot more better if this sink was over here and it really just makes sense. What happens? Yeah, I'll look into that and get back to you later. I mean, I think they really teach them that phrase in management school. Oh yeah, I hear you. I'm going to look into that and get back to you later. Well, when does later come? Mañana, 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 right? And mañana never comes. So what would happen if the whole store acted together? What would happen if everybody went and talked about that sink? What would happen if we did a demand around that sink or around another issue? Standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity, making a demand for a change. This is the union difference. This is the piece that we need to explain to people, and you explain it to them by a very concrete example. Narrative is important. Do you think we could accomplish more if we acted together? This is a great question, because people, they scratch their heads. Yeah, maybe we could. So these are all those kinds of questions that explain the union difference. And that piece about a little bit about the process, that little bit about the process is a plan to win. We're going to do a petition. We're all going to wear a button. We're going to do a petition and then march on the boss. We're going to wear a button and then talk to the customer about it. We're going to wear a button, talk to the customer about it, and then leaflet in front of the store. So you have to have a plan that has escalating levels of activity. Number 4, what do you think management will do? So this is really important because how does management feel when everyone's acting together? Usually makes them a little uneasy, right? And so oftentimes they react. And they react in a whole bunch of different ways given internal campaigns and external campaigns. Many of you have been around for decades. Have you ever seen when we're in the contract negotiations and we're about to take a strike vote or something and management puts up the signs in the store saying that they're ready to hire people for, $25 an hour? That is a very common management tactic to try and spread fear and division. I want you guys to understand, our job is singular of purpose. It's unity. Unity, unity, unity. That is our job. Their job is divide, divide, divide. And any way that they can do that, they will use any way that they can drive a wedge. And one of the first one is they're going to hire people to cross the picket line and pay them more than you're making now. That's purely a fear tactic. So we have to inoculate on the boss's reaction. And I say inoculate, many of you just recently got vaccinated. It's the same kind of thing. What will management think of us acting together? Yet again, I'm asking questions. People generally say, well, they won't like it. Why won't they like it? It's a setup question. They're setting me up so that I can say, do you think they like the way things are now? Who has the power now? What do you think they'll do? And many of you have been around long enough to know what they're going to do. They're going to spread rumors. They're going to spread misinformation. They're going to try and cause fear. They're going to post those signs hiring scabs, for lack of a better word. They're going to do all of those things, right, in order to cause division, in order to cause fear and division. And then, do you think they will try and confuse us? Oh, well, if the union comes in, you're going to get stuck with this PTO plan that is infinitely confusing, right? It's very complicated, and you'll never be able to deal with your boss directly again. And if you want to go to that parent-teachers conference, you're going to have to call Mike, the president of Local 367, to get approval. I mean, I'm not making this up. And will they try to divide us? Of course they will. So these are the kinds of questions you can ask, but you also have to talk. You also have to tell them, what have we seen in the past? And I'm giving you guys some examples, right? It's basically, the union is an outside third party. They're just after your dues money. They're going to force you out on strike. And, it's just another layer of bureaucracy and red tape that you're going to have to deal with. So now we get down to the meat of it. What is the ask and what is the specific follow-up plan? So I always try and get a commitment, and then I always try and make sure that I'm following up. Will you sign the petition and get your friend Mike to sign the petition? That's great. Today's Thursday. I'm going to see you on Sunday. The follow-up is the most important, you guys. That's where the rubber meets the road. I tell these guys that I work with all the time, the text that I like the least, I guess I shouldn't say the least, but when somebody says to me, hey, Joe, let's go out to lunch. Okay, I'm always open for lunch, right? But I really need to know, what are you doing Wednesday at 1 o'clock, right? Teriyaki, Wednesday, 1 o'clock, Orchard Avenue. Now I can make a plan. So we have to get really specific. And I'm going to give you guys one last slide here that is a real specific ask with a follow-up plan. What are we asking people to do here? I want you to look at this flyer. Will you stand by us by signing the petition, wearing the button, coming to the rally? You ask them these questions, they commit, they say yes. Then what do I have to do? Well, here's a very specific one that I'm going to show you. We are voting yes. This was at an Albertsons in Boise that I had the pleasure of organizing in 2018. We are voting yes. There's the ballot, and there's the check mark. Doesn't get much more specific than that. Then when are we doing it? Join us on November 8th. Vote yes. The time is from 10 to 11:30 and 3 to 4:30. The location is upstairs in the storage room. That's the level of detail that we have to get the follow-up, to get the follow-through, to get what we need. And the workers themselves have to take ownership and be excited by it. So when I ask about getting the commitment and getting the follow-up, you guys, that's how specific we have to get. Will you sign the petition? Absolutely. Great. Sign it right here. Right? All of that stuff. That's what we're looking to do. I may be ending here a couple minutes early, and I'm not sure, but I do want to talk about some helpful tips for that conversation. So obviously we have that commitment, we have that follow-up, we have that 5-point wrap, and I can go through it really quickly. Just one more quick bit of review. You introduce yourself and build rapport. You solicit issues and you agitate around those issues, right? You identify what they are. You explain to people how the union works and what is the union difference. You inoculate folks around the boss's campaign. What's the boss going to do and why? Then you get a commitment from people of what action they're willing to take and a follow-up to make sure that they actually have done it. And in order to do that, here are some helpful tips that are going to carry this conversation forward. And the biggest one is to listen. When you ask those open-ended questions, it's really important you don't answer for people. So you have to listen to what they say and make sure that they feel heard. A little reflecting back helps. So what you're saying is, so what I'm hearing you say is, right? A little summarizing. So what you're telling me is like, you're okay with the pay, but the medical insurance has gotten worse and you don't feel like your boss listens to you. Does that make sense? Right? That's a little reflection. You have to ask questions. You have to continue asking questions throughout the conversation. Asking questions, tell me more about that. Is that really what you mean? Going a little deeper. Don't argue, right? I mean, it's just common sense, but I see people do it. Not everybody loves the union and not everybody's in the same place you are, so we have to meet people where they're at and then bring them to our side of the table, so don't argue. Don't assume. Just because the last person that you talked to had a problem with the wages doesn't mean that this person that you're talking to will. If you're in that situation where, you know, Mike loves the wages, but he's got problems with the medical, and Mary loves the medical but hates the wages, make sure you're talking to the right person about the right thing. Be honest. You know, the thing is that you only have one time to make that first impression, and if you only believe in the union by 98%, the member is going to sniff out that 2% that you don't. So make sure that you can't convince somebody to do this if you're not 100%. So make sure that you're not only honest with the member, but that you're honest with yourself. And then if you don't know the answer, say so. You know what? I don't know, but I'm going to ask Mia and get back to you tomorrow. If you say that, you better get back to him tomorrow. I'd like to give myself a few more days, right? Hey, you know what? I don't know how that works, but I'm going to ask Mia and I'll get back to you on Monday. Make sure that you are very solid in that, and it's okay. Then I like to tell the organizers to practice the 3 C's. I only have 2 of them here. Clear, concise, and concrete. No one wants to endure a lecture. So be very clear, be very concise, and be very concrete. So hopefully this will help you guys as we move forward and change the culture of this local from a service model local to an organizing local. There's plenty more books and things that we can read and talk about around this stuff, but this is the basics of the organizing conversation, and it's my honor to present it to you guys. I hope that y'all can use it as you move forward. Okay? So that's pretty much it for me.